Welcome, everybody. So glad you could join us today. Um, really looking forward to the discussion that we'll have with Chad. Now, this is the second of two of these that we've run. If you did happen to attend the previous one, you will get some new stuff from this one, as I do every time I have a conversation with Chad. But the topic today are the 7 crucial steps to closing new clients, and why education is critical to pretty much all of those steps. And we'll get into that. If you don't know who we are, we've run several webinars, and Chad's done a lot of stuff for us, and is one of our legendary gorillas. But my name is Matt Hicken. I am the Senior Vice President of Client Success here at Bill Good Marketing. Been in the industry for about 21 years and worked in the industry, was fully licensed. I do have my AMS designation. And I worked basically running a practice in the business. So then we've Chad, and I'll let you briefly introduce yourself too.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. I'm glad to be here today and help everybody in any way I possibly can. I've got a little over 20 years of experience in the industry. I'm a CFP and worked for a handful of different firms, but I've been a gorilla for about 18 years, and glad to be here and share some of the ideas that I picked up from Bill and the rest of the team over the years.
Yeah. Well, and if they gave designations for all of the other courses and things that you've picked up and learned and mastered, you'd have quite a few on there. So the AIF, CFP, those are huge, obviously, but quite a bit more to it than that. So that being said, and we'll talk about that in a minute, I do want to just throw in a couple of items of housekeeping before we jump into the topic fully. First off, obviously, I want this to be as beneficial to you as possible. You're taking a break out of your day. I want to make sure that you get a lot from this. We do have the opportunity for questions. If you have questions for Chad, down at the bottom, if you've never been in a Zoom meeting, there is an option for a chat. If you just click on that and type in your question or comment, we would be happy to answer it. I'll see it immediately, and we'll address it as soon as it fits into the discussion. But please do jump in there and participate. Take advantage of this opportunity. The next item of housekeeping is, obviously, we want this to be very beneficial to you. There's a few things we're going to be talking about today that have to do with our sales pipeline. And we've outlined, Bill's mastered this over decades. We've outlined the entire pipeline, the ABCs of that management, and how to take care of everything in there. We'll talk about that briefly today, but we're going to give you that document. And then on top of that, if you choose, if it's something that you could benefit from, which I think everybody on the call could benefit from this, one of our coaches can reach out to you and discuss with you your growth plans and help you run through an analysis, a growth analysis, where things might be impeding your growth, where things could be improved, or where you could get a little bit more additional help from some of our best practices that could get you to where you want to go. So that's part of that report card, or at the end, it'll just be a brief survey we'll ask you to fill out, and then you'll get that goodie bag. On that survey, that's where you can say, yes, I would like that growth analysis, and our team will reach out to you. So that being said, commercial aside, let's go into our topic. And really kind of what I've found is that over the last several years in particular, maybe the last 5 years, the whole sales process has it always kind of goes through shifts and turns, but it has gone through a bit of a shift. And I think there's a difference between what some advisors are trying to go at and the way they go about their sales cycle versus what investors actually want. And so there was a recent survey that was conducted amongst high net worth investors and really looking for what it is that they want from a financial advisor. And I think this is a good start to our discussion, because obviously, as you're going through your sales cycle, this should be the crux. And you can see the different options up there. And that is, number one, you have to have understanding of their situation, understanding of what they need, and understanding of what's brought them to the level that they're at now, right? And everything that's involved with them. And then showing a great deal of respect for that, showing that you do value, who they are and where they're coming from and what they're trying to accomplish. And then, of course, all of us have always known that you have to have a high degree of integrity. You can't get into this industry and promise one thing and not follow through. The next piece is that you have to be accessible. And there's two parts to that, right? That you are reaching out to them on a regular basis. And when they need you, they can get you. And there's some pieces to that. The overall, our system will help with those things. We're not going to get into that as much today, but it is an important piece. Finally, or the next pieces are, of course, is holistic. And I think Chad and you and I were talking about this. I think this term is tossed around in the industry way too much, but pretty much what they mean by that, what the investors mean by that, is that they can come to you and you can help them. Whether that's, hey, I got a guy for that, or hey, I've got a girl for that, or hey, I can help you with that myself. But that they can just come to you for their financial needs and you'll take care of it. And then obviously you have to be competent. You can't be in this industry if you don't know what you're doing. If you barely know how to pick, stocks or mutual funds, you're not sure about the ins and outs of estate planning and other things, then I mean, you're going to have problems. But one of the things we found is investors expect you to be competent. And then finally, they want education from you. They want you to provide education, which obviously ties into our main crux of our topic today. But so for you, Chad, obviously you've seen this in investors, but in your onboarding process, how important is it to you, and then how do you demonstrate these different characteristics that investors are looking for?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Matt. Throughout the onboarding process, I think it's extremely important for you to be able to clearly demonstrate what differentiates you from the person they currently use, or from possibly the other competitors that they're looking at down the street, so to speak. And the educational component, or integrating that educational component into your initial discussion with them is critical. I think it's easy to quantify the investment performance, or it's easy to quantify, maybe an investment process. I think a lot of us struggle with quantifying our understanding, our holistic approach. I mean, we throw the buzzwords out there, but for the most part, most people are like, yeah, the last person said that they're, really well educated, that they take a holistic approach, that, they're, a person of integrity, that they're competent in many areas, or all areas of what I need. And there's a difference between, I think, saying those things and demonstrating those things. And so throughout my initial meetings, and really any of my meetings, I work really hard to emulate those, points. And so from the educational component, I think that is pretty easy if you've put the time into it, which is a huge caveat, because unfortunately, a lot of advisors just haven't. But if you've stayed abreast of, the rules and the changes and the tax laws and the estate planning changes, and maybe specifics to your state, and different changes with Medicare or Social Security, you can start to speak to it in that initial meeting, and you start to uncover some of the reasons why they're there. I mean, no matter what, they're not sitting in front of you if they use another advisor because they're thrilled with the other advisor. There's something that's caused them to be sitting in front of you. And so you need to uncover that, but then start discussing, and I like to somewhat show my knowledge by asking questions about some of the things that are most important to them. I mean, the very first question that I always ask when a client comes in the door, and I would say this is 100% of the time, honestly, or real close to it, unless I just totally, blow it or forget, is, tell me, Mr. Prospective Client, what is it that I will have had to address or achieve today during our meeting, for at the end of it, for you to say that this was really valuable and important to you, or that you found value in our meeting today. And then just be really quiet for, 60, 90, maybe 120 seconds, and listen, and let them speak as long as they'll possibly speak, and take a few notes on what it is that they answer. Well, I really need you to address helping us maximize our Social Security. I need you to address your investment management process and risk management given the current market conditions. I need you to address how we would get cash flow from this portfolio or from this nest egg that we've created by selling our business. I need you to address how you would actively help me minimize my taxes on my investment income. Yeah, I mean, you could just keep going and going and going, but I think that kind of question is extremely important to say, Mr. and Mrs. prospective client, what is it that I will have had to have covered today for you to leave at the end of this meeting and say that was extremely valuable to me? And then take your agenda, wad it up, and throw it in the garbage. Do not follow what you think is important. Follow what they think is important. And then start asking the questions that I mean, to most people, they probably could barely define what holistic is as it pertains to a financial advisor. And nobody's going to say they lack an education. We're all going to say we're well educated. So demonstrate it. So, for example, I go into a series of questions at that point that start to show my level of education and the holistic planning and the understanding that I actually listen to them. So I might say, for example, Mr. and Mrs. Client, tell me a little bit about what you've done so far to try to get the answers that you need to maximize your Social Security. I might go on to ask other questions like, as we go through different parts of their initial fact finding meeting, tell me a little bit about your plan to address long term care, Alzheimer's care, adult daycare, or assisted living. It could be a legal plan, it could be a policy of some type that covers, it could be funds that are earmarked specifically for that. But I just want to open the discussion or start to uncover some of the things that we're going to address that should have probably been addressed 10, 15, 20 years ago, but either were never touched, the other advisor didn't even know to ask, or, the client didn't know either until you had kind of brought it up that this is something that is could be an issue. Tell me a little bit about what you've done to help your family avoid probate. Mr. Client, I love asking the question, do you have a tax planner or a tax preparer? And they often come back with, what do you mean? What's the difference? And I'll explain, a tax preparer, you just give them all your documents, maybe in January, February. Then you go back maybe in late March or early April for a 15-minute meeting, have some small talk about the family, and then they tell you what you owe and you're on your way. A tax planner is somebody that meets with myself and them in November or December while we still have time to impact this tax year. And we challenge each other to look at different strategies to make sure that we don't leave anything on the table. You still are going to pay your fair share, but we don't want to ever have you overpay or miss an opportunity or a write-off or deduction. So a tax planner is somebody that actively works with us to help you mitigate your taxes. Now, would you say, Mr. Client, that you have a tax planner or a tax preparer? And 9 times out of 10, they're going to say we have a tax preparer. Would you see a value in me recommending a tax planner and us sitting down to try to reduce your tax burden each year? It's one of the few close-ended questions I ask. Most of the time it's tell me and get them speaking sort of thing. But I think you can demonstrate your education, you can demonstrate your integrity, you can demonstrate, because truly a lot of things I ask questions about don't have a commission or a fee attached to them. It's showing that you care. They always say you've got to show that you care before they care what you know. And so by asking these questions, I'm showing the holistic approach, I'm showing my level of education, I'm showing that I'm addressing their specific needs and what it is that's important to them. I'm hitting probably 4 or 5 of those items that they say are most important in gaining a new client.
Yeah. No, and I 100% agree. And there's so much in that I want to break it down even further from there. So what I'm showing up on the screen now is our entire pipeline in a picture, right? So this is the sales pipeline management process in one picture. And I want to talk about that lead gen because exactly what Chad has said is 100% correct. And that, we have to, and this is our first crucial of the 7 crucial steps, is we have to source new leads and new business with a purpose, right? And it all has to. So we call it campaign objective. The whole purpose of everything we're running should be to bring people to sit in front of you because they see that you are the expert advisor. Right? We have the 3 identities that you're an expert advisor, you are a caring, well-mannered individual, and you're a good citizen that participates and helps in the community. This identity is is going to establish the fact that you are trustworthy. Because exactly as you said, Chad, the last thing you'd want to do is go to for example, a used car lot. And when the salesperson walks up, the very first thing they do is stick out their hand and say, "Hi, my name is Matt, and you can trust me." The very first thought I would have is, I need to leave this lot, right? So the idea is to demonstrate it, and you start that in that lead generation process. The other thing is, if you'll notice as it goes along here, then we move into the lead development. And this is the process that not everybody really has down. And they don't follow it exactly as they should. So one of the things I want to point out here, and this is another crucial step, is there's such a thing as ghost prospects. So these are the people that you meet with. And sorry, I'm going to.
This always chokes Matt up. It's one of those topics that's near and dear to him. So,
but so lead development is an area that not every advisor has down, and that's really where we step in and help. And it's those ghost prospects that are the key, right? Because one of the other crucial steps that we have in here is that you always have scheduled your next appointment. So in other words, when you meet with them and then you're going to prepare your recommendations and meet with them with your recommendations or your proposal, schedule that while you're with them rather than sending them home and trying to call to schedule. I can't even tell you how many advisors I've talked to that have been ghosted by prospects because they didn't have that next appointment scheduled, that next touch already scheduled. So you've got to have that as part of your process so you're not losing them as you go through your lead development. Then, of course, we come down to the final end, and that's where we have our sales process. And that's when you're actually sitting down in front of folks and walking through your actual sales, pitch, and which was exactly what Chad has talked about. I would say that, and I don't know if you would agree on this, Chad, but this whole, you're still you're following, to the letter. I would say that how you get the lead, how you profile, and how you educate determines 80 to 90% of the reason behind why you close or don't close.
Yeah, I would agree totally. I mean, and even, just stepping back for 1 second too, Matt, on the sales process. I mean, this same sales process is the same sales process that Bill showed me, 18 years ago when I became a gorilla. And it still applies today, no different than it did back then. I mean, there might be some different subcomponents of because maybe today some of your leads come from social media or different things that really didn't happen 18 years ago, but the whole process is still the same process that we follow today. I mean, you have to keep your pipeline full. And what, your actions today, I've always thought, and I still 100% believe this, following, Bill's sales process, the actions that you take today are typically going to show in 60 to 90 days, or the inactions that you take today. I mean, if your pipeline isn't full and you're not continuously kind of stoking the furnace and throwing more wood on the fire, so to speak, and finding new opportunities to add to your prospect list and folks to call on, and the pits and cherries, and that same analogy that Bill wrote in his book, I guess close to 30 years ago, is still the same methodology that I look at today, from a follow-up standpoint and an activity standpoint. I mean, it's this process is no different today, and it's still what I follow today for bringing in all the new business that I bring in.
Yeah, and I think that comes because you don't lose out on people, right? I mean, you can run a seminar and get great results, have 60, 70, 80% of the attendees request an appointment. But what about for that 20, 30 that didn't?
Yeah.
This ensures that they stay in the cycle and they come back to you over a period of time. So that's really where this comes into play. And it's exactly as you said, it hasn't changed much. I mean, we've added in some pieces like we have a set process for ghost prospects, a set process for some of the pits and things like that. All of this is defined, and it's in that document that you'll get if you'll fill out the report card at the end of this as part of the goodie bag. So with that said, I want to go into really the critical piece to this, right? So having this process in place is a big part, but our third crucial step of our 7, and I'm going to stop sharing so we can actually see Chad here. The third step of our crucial steps is profiling using knock questions. Because when we profile, there are 3 types of questions, right? There's the non-important or non-permanent information questions. Those are things like, okay, if I sit down in front of a prospect and I say, hey, what have you guys been up to today? Well, we just got back from lunch. Oh, where did you eat? That has no bearing on their financial plan, but it's a good question, right? We're going to ask, we're going to dig in, we're going to get to know people, right? So that's a good question to ask. The next level are the more personal questions, right? That's where we're going to get into, okay, well, tell me about the family. Tell me about the kids. Tell me about your job. What are you most proud of in what you've accomplished in your career? Those questions are a little more personal, but it still doesn't necessarily, that's not going to move somebody. That's just going to help build up a little bit of a relationship, because when it comes down to it, it's the knock questions, and that's NOC for non-optimal condition questions. And Chad, you've already given us some of those, but to me, the way you use knock questions is so powerful in the sales process, because this is where you're getting to people to realize that they need to make a change. So, and you've already given us a few of those, but walk us through, because I think there's kind of the 2 parts to how you ask knock questions. And why don't you explain how you use those, and maybe even we can talk about a few of the others that you use.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I mean, you've often, maybe somebody's read that book, The Wedge, but you talk about, or quite often bring up, kind of some of those hot button topics with the client in a non-confrontational way. I mean, you never, because they made the decision to hire the other person, even if you think the other person is just the worst financial advisor in the world or just a complete idiot, you never really want to call it out that way, just because now you're almost, in some ways, some people will internalize it as if you're calling them out on their decision-making process. So I think it's important to be very soft with this. And so I point out the issues in a really nice way, I think, and then also follow it up with, that's not a problem, we can take care of that. So I'm typically always following right behind it. So I'll go through, and I like to hit on the hot buttons for sure, which for everybody it's taxes. So I'll ask quite often that question about, do you have a tax planner or a tax preparer? But then quite often I'll even come back with a question of, tell me a little bit about your tax planning and what you do each year to mitigate your tax burden. And then they'll say, well, we really don't do much, or, we're just kind of at the whim of, we go and find out, and we write a big check or whatever it might be. And I'll just come back with, that's not a problem, we can fix that. Put them at ease, that it can be fixed, and that reassure them that you're the person that can fix it. I'll go into, typically after taxes, estate planning is a huge one. I mean, we find, I would say, over 60% of prospective clients that come into us don't have their estate planning in order. Now, they may have done it 38 years ago when they were getting on a plane to go to Mexico on vacation. And Billy was 6 and now he's 44 and it makes no sense. Or they may have never done it and said, yeah, I'm 65, I'm a business owner, I'm married, I've got kids, and we've been talking about this for 5 years and just never addressed it because a lot of people don't want to talk about it. But I think, so I typically, after I have that tax conversation, I'll go into, a knock question on estate planning. Tell me a little bit about um, what you've done to protect your family from probate, and also how old or how recent is your power of attorney for medical and financial. I know in Illinois, if the power of attorney for medical is more than about 7 years old because they rewrote some of the HIPAA privacy laws, it's no good. It's actually, you could wad it up and throw it away because the hospital will not use it to get second opinions, to order medical records, and so on and so forth. And a lot of people are walking around thinking, "Oh yeah, I did it 15 years ago." Well, it's out of date, and unfortunately, the attorney didn't do their job to follow up and revise it to make it in accordance with current statutes. So, that's a nice hot button to bring up and talk about. And then a lot of them have concerns of, what if one of us, they've had a parent or a relative possibly go into some type of long-term care facility or assisted living. So tell me a little bit about your plan if one of you would need adult daycare, Alzheimer's care, or assisted living. And it doesn't mean that we're going to sell them a policy. In fact, a lot of those policies I'm not real big on, but I do want to either earmark some funds, look at some of the better policies, or look at maybe some different legal methodologies depending on your state to protect some of these assets from creditors or nursing homes or things like that. So I'll go into that question, asking about, tell me a little bit about your plan if one of you would have to go into adult daycare, assisted living, or Alzheimer's care. And then be quiet. Like, I don't care how uncomfortable it is. If you got to sit there and stare at the wall for a minute and a half, which will seem like 15, do that, because it's also uncomfortable for them, but in a good way, because it'll start to really pull from their heart and they'll start to really open up and tell you what it is that, either this is really important to me, or we've done A, B, and C, but we really need to do more. You just really want to get to the root of what it is that they want you to solve, and then become a problem solver for them. I'll go on to ask them questions specifically about, talking about tell me, Mr. Client, what does the day after retirement look like for you? And that's a really cool question, because now that's not, tell me, Mr. Client, how would you feel about this fixed indexed annuity product that pays me 19% and you can never get out of? And this isn't something with this giant commission attached. It's actually something that you genuinely care about their health and well-being, and their mindset and mental health, because we've all seen it. There are a good number of retirees that kind of go through a funky period at the very least after they retire, because for 40 years they've worked towards this magic number, but they put all their focus and thought on getting to that magic date, that magic number, and then they never really put a thought into, okay, we're going to downsize. We're going to move 3 counties away from all our friends. 2 of my best friends I eat lunch with every day, and I'm not going to see them because they got to still work for 5 more years. And, we've never been together with our spouse for those 50 hours a week that we were gone between commuting to work and being at the office and whatever. So now we're going to spend every waking moment there. We haven't really got any hobbies anymore, because the ones we would tell you we haven't done in 10 years because we've been so busy with work. And we don't have another job lined up because, we thought, this is it, I want to retire, but maybe we do want to get out of the house and do something. We, haven't really ended up any volunteer opportunities. Haven't really thought about it. I mean, it just opens a whole plethora of different questions. And you can explain, Mr. Client, at times I've had retirees that have thought about reaching that day, but never thought about the day after or the week after or the month after, what they do to fulfill their day and to have purpose every day, to get up with that same drive, because most of us identify ourselves with who we are and what we do for a career. And now that career's done, they lose some of that direction. And I don't want you, I want you to benefit from this experience that I bring to the table, and tell you that it might be important that we look at volunteering, or possibly some, charity work, or something at your church, or possibly, joining a golf league, a bridge club, just different things. Or did you always want to do something else? I mean, do you want to be the person at the hardware store that helps people find nuts and bolts just to get out of the house and meet people on a daily basis? But I think to tell, Mr. Client, tell me what the day after retirement looks like to you.
Mhm.
And then just be quiet is a phenomenal question.
I 100% agree. I always love to follow that one up with exactly what you said in there too. So, and I say often, everybody has day one planned, right? It's a lot of, TV or hammock time or whatever it might be, or you're on the course. But, tell me what's the plan for income and, the day to day, and to be around people and to be mentally active on day 1,220. There's that great piece that Hartford, I think they bought it, but it's an MIT Age Lab put out, called 8,000 Days. Great presentation if you ever want to look at it. But if you're looking for some good knock questions, you can get some from there. Some of the other knock questions I've heard, and I've stolen these from you, Chad, and we used them in our office, were things like, tell me about your and your plans. Tell me about how much it's going to take monthly to fund your lifestyle and retirement. Another one, tell me about your current strategy for covering healthcare costs in retirement, including your Medicare plan.
That's a huge one.
Yeah. And then also, another one I liked was, tell me about your current relationship with your advisor, because that gives you some good stuff to move on. And they're not going to be meeting with you if everything's absolutely hunky-dory. There's something there.
Yeah.
But I love the way you did that, because I think this is important to understand, that you ask that question. Sometimes you provide a little education in the question, but then you provide some education. Well, after being quiet, like shut up, ask the question, be quiet, listen, and then provide a little bit of education, and then provide them hope. And I love the way you said that, because it's not well, we could fix that for you if you decide to work with us. It's, we're going to fix that, right? We can fix that together. So you've already decided this relationship is happening. And if you keep that language throughout, then it's going to be, it's going to be a good thing. You can even ask at that point, well, Mr. and Mrs. Klein, if we can fix that, would that be important enough for us to get to working together as soon as possible?
Yeah.
They say yes, and you move on to the next section.
Well, and a caveat with that, and I think this is something Bill taught me years ago, but you always treat your best prospects like your best clients. If you're calling your best clients because of an event in the market or in the economy or whatever's happening to fill them in, call your best prospects with the exact same message. And it's the same thing. With this, if as you transition through this conversation, it's not if you become a client, that's not a problem. We can fix that when we start working together. Or that's not a problem. We can fix that. All we have to do is fill out a couple forms and get going down the path to do that for you. So you start changing that conversation from you're questioning it, you're not sure, like the if, to, dude, I've just uncovered like 17 things and we've only talked for 45 minutes. We can get this fixed for you right away. All we need to do is fill out a few forms to move forward. So transition fairly quickly. Don't talk yourself back out of a sale.
Yeah, and I think that's an important piece. I was talking to an advisor the other day that caught himself doing that. And thankfully he caught himself, because a lot of advisors don't, where they have it so set that, okay, well, we're going to talk today. I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions. This is my discovery meeting. And then we're going to move into our proposal meeting. And then we'll move finally into our implementation meeting, and then you'll sign paperwork. And they're so set on that's the process that in meeting one, they ask a knock question. They find a like the pain point for that client. They tell them they can fix it, and then they move on. And they miss that perfect opportunity of, oh, we really got to get this going. I mean, to get this started, we just need to sign these forms. That'll bring your account over here and we can get moving. You could have gone for that, and they didn't. And the advisor I was talking to saw that. And in fact, based upon that and some other work we've done, he's narrowed down his discovery meetings down to an hour. Whereas previously it was an hour and a half to 2 hours. And it's really not necessary if you're asking the right questions and you're really truly finding that pain. And just to put a plug in there, to me, this whole process, I mean, we can go through this. Chad is going through all this stuff. You can take this and you can try to implement it, but we are hosting a boot camp, and it's our sales success boot camp. And I actually run that boot camp. We're going to be teaching. So this is great for new advisors or advisors that have been around for a long time, but haven't actually been prospecting, just been relying on referrals. But those that are really going out there to get sales, we'll go through all of this process. We'll practice these knock questions. We'll practice seeing when it's time to close, and we'll give you the written process out of exactly what it should look like, so that as you're bringing on other advisors, you're getting ready to transition, you can hand this to them or even send them to the class, and they can get fully up to speed and be able to sell, as well as anybody. So that is out there. We'll give some more information on that at the end, but I think this is the key piece. Again, like I said, profiling appropriately, using those 3 different types of questions and using those knock questions, as Chad has already described. That's going to be huge. I mean, just that alone is going to help you increase your closing percentage. But the next piece to that is if you just ask the knock question, but there's nothing backing it up, right? You can't go in and provide the education of, tell me about how your family is planning on covering the healthcare costs, including Medicare, but you know nothing about the rules of Medicare. You're going to be kind of dead in the water. And that comes up to my 4th critical or crucial step of the 7, and that is be well educated yourself. So now, Chad, I know obviously your time is exceptionally valuable, which is why I'm so grateful that you spent this time with us. But how do you decide where you're going to spend your education time? What kind of topics are you looking for? And then what are some of the go-to sources you use?
Yeah, some of it's trial and error. I mean, I've made the same mistakes we've all made over the years. I mean, the longer you've been in the business, you hopefully you learn from them, but you've made probably more mistakes than things you've done right over the years, whatever it is in any aspect, and that includes education. I've spent money on webinars or classes or different offsite seminars and things like that, and sat through and wondered if I was going to pull even 1 or 2 things out of it to come back and offer to my clients. I always go into any type of event like that thinking if I can write down 3 to 5 actionable items to come back and introduce to some or all of my clients, that it was of value. And so there are a number of different ways. I mean, a lot of your firms will have a firm conference now that I think things are getting back to normal. You'll get back to those live. I haven't missed a Bill Good Advisor Con in the 18 years, with the exception of, I think, 1. And even then, even the times where I didn't miss, and the one time I did miss, I would typically buy the recordings so that I could listen to some of those speakers 3 and 4 and 5 times. And truly, any of these conferences, whether it's your firm conference, whether it's the Bill Good Advisor Con that's going to happen later this fall, or some of the other ones, I mean, I've always looked at it like it's maybe 50-60% about the people up on stage and the speakers and what they're going to teach you, and probably 40 to 50% about the person sitting to the right and the left and the person behind you, because you can really have a good opportunity to talk to some of your peers that are throughout the country in different areas that have different niche markets and that are doing some stuff differently, that you might be able to pick up some wonderful ideas that are actionable to come back and help your clients. And then in addition to that, my thought from a education standpoint as a bare minimum is that I would do something once a quarter. So at least every 90 days, I would typically fly to, a 2 day, a 3 day event somewhere on, some type of educational topic where I felt like it was going to add value and increase my competitive advantage, but also give more value and demonstrate, education and holistic planning and integrity and so on and so forth to my clients. And so, at the very least, I would typically on an annual basis, and still do this to this day, I would do AdvisorCon every year. I would do one of the Ed Slot IRA trainings every year. They offer them throughout the country in different locations. I would do the horse's mouth. They have like a 2.5 day class on Social Security and Medicare. They also offer one on tax planning. They also offer one that I've done at times on, I think I've done it 3 times now on college planning. And then I've had other things that I've kind of sprinkled in, the CFP conference, either the regional or national one has been phenomenal. Investment News, I know, offers a retirement planning conference in Chicago every year. Hecklinger offers a estate planning and charitable gifting strategy type conference down in Florida every year. I've went to the ETF conference down in Hollywood quite a few times in Hollywood, Florida. The University of Indiana has a strategy school where they'll teach like 1 or 2 day classes on different concepts for charitable gifting. And the cool thing about like that one, and I've mentioned this before to other people, is I'm typically the only financial advisor in that class, and everybody else in the class is, like I think the last time I went a couple of years ago, the person sat across from me was like the CEO or CFO of the Michael Dell Foundation. The person that sat to my left was, a C-level person for the Ronald McDonald Foundation. The person to my right was the person that was the head of philanthropy and charitable gifting for Purdue University. And I mean, it was just kind of a who's who, and it was very interesting because they were really excited to be able to pick my brain on different things. And I was just as excited because they have people coming to them on a regular basis making, $1 million gift or a $3 million gift or a $5 million gift. And so I learned so much from them and they learned so much from me, but there was nobody else that competed with me sitting in that room. So now I can go back and sit down with a new prospect. And I always ask, this is another question I typically always ask is, tell me a little bit about your charitable gifting strategy or your legacy planning and what it is that's important to you as it relates to that. And you get some really interesting answers. I mean, sometimes it's I don't do a lot. Sometimes, well, it's really important that I tithe to my church, and it's really important that, I take care of these 3 organizations because this one meant this to my family and this one helped, this hospice did this for my parents and so on and so forth. Or sometimes that, I want to leave a $1 million gift to my alma mater and I don't really know how to do that. And I'd love to discuss that in more depth with you. You kind of see what excites them through that education. But had I not went to some of those classes, a lot of us wouldn't feel comfortable about advanced charitable planning or discussing it. And, so it brings so much more value to do those kind of things. Typically for myself, my goal is to do 2 classes a quarter, and it helps me bring 3 to 6 new ideas to my clients on a regular basis. So when I sit down with a client, we don't do a review meeting. We're doing a strategy session. It's how you term it. It's the words you use that are, A review is looking in the rear view mirror. We don't do that because of the educational component that I'm doing actively. And because of all the changes with tax laws and estate planning rules and Medicare and Social Security and whatever, we're doing a strategy discussion or a strategy session. I don't ever hold review sessions. And so we're looking forward to say, we need to do 1, 2, and 3 because of what just changed last year to make sure that you're, set up perfectly to not hit one of those pitfalls.
And I think, Chad, I think that's a great point, because one of the things, it's not part of the big 7 things, but it is in all the different research and surveys that I've seen out there. And then I saw myself in the office that everybody wants to be unique. They want to be set apart. And when they go to an advisor like you, and they're hearing these kinds of knock questions that, as you've said before, I know you and I have talked often about this, that, people are like, oh, nobody's ever asked me that. Like, is that actually, like, what do you mean by that? What is that? Like, how do you do that? Like, that's what I want, and those kinds of responses are exactly what you want. But what you are providing is something that other advisors don't, because they're not going to these things as often as they should and staying up to date. And I actually did have a question on that, Chad. So David Blake asks, was that the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy?
Yeah, I believe so. That I'll double check just to be sure, but it's through Indiana University, and it is a school of philanthropy. Easy word for me to say. I can't even say the word, and I can still get the clients. So this tells you how simple it is. But no, all kidding aside, I'm pretty sure that's it. But I will look back. I've got my there's some phenomenal material and books, and they do share all their lists of the attendees and all their email addresses. And I mean, I've even used them as resources. So I will find out. More than likely, it is it too, because if you jump on there and you see a list of courses, it probably is.
And we'll pass it on to David, and you and I can touch base on that. So we'll make sure, we'll confirm it, but I would imagine that is correct. But so before we close out, I know we're running low on time here. Please do, if you have any questions, please drop them in there. But I do want to get into this final stage, and it's, Chad and I were talking about that this stage this morning, and this is, branding yourself, which is our 5th crucial step. Branding yourself as the go-to source for financial information. Part of this we've already discussed. By having this information, you've got to be well educated, and you've got to then communicate that through your questions. But then part of that brand is how you've set up your office, how you've staged it, what it looks like, and then how you present. And I was talking to Chad this morning. There was an advisor that we worked with that I think now he's left the industry, so I'm safe to share this without him being embarrassed. But he was the type that would, on purpose, stand literally almost right over his prospective client with a big not whiteboard, but a big pad of paper, where he would draw out, trying to do it as complex as possible to intimidate the prospect with this crazy financial world we're in, and so that they would feel like, there's no way I can survive without working with this advisor. And Chad and I were laughing about that this morning. It's the opposite of what I would recommend. So how do you stage an education session? How do you explain to folks different concepts that they may not have grasped before? How do you make that a little more personal?
Yeah, no. And that really goes hand in hand to, you're interviewing them, they're interviewing you when they walk into your office for that first time. And they really want somebody that they can relate to, that they can understand. Bill always talked about, when you're giving a presentation, whether it's in front of a group of 20 or to a couple sitting across from you, speak at maybe a 4th, 5th, 6th grade level. Don't use industry jargon. Don't try to, I think honestly, some try to either intimidate, try to confuse, almost treat them like they're stupid or belittle them. I think it's important to do the exact opposite in every possible way. And that starts from the second they walk into the office. Bill taught me staging the office years ago, but walk into your office and see if it feels warm and inviting. This is a huge decision. I've heard statistics over the years where, it's like the third most stressful situation, or third most stressful decision or thing they have to do. They always say it's public speaking, then death, then coming in for the first time if you've never used a financial advisor to that huge, beautiful office with the giant marble columns and the mahogany desk, and sitting across almost like you're at the principal's office or applying for a bank loan when you first got out of college and weren't sure if you were going to get it. And you know where you didn't feel like it was real warm and fuzzy and the person was real approachable. I think you want to stage that waiting room, have that nice couch almost like somebody's living room, have some pictures of some cool events that you've done with your clients, have some pictures maybe of some cool family events or things that you've done. Show them that you're no different than them and that you're very approachable and down to earth, and kind of
Welcome
set
sign can be a big part of that too.
What's that?
Having a welcome sign for your
Yeah, I mean, have a welcome sign. I mean, make sure that point of first impression or master of first impressions, that person that's greeting them, has a warm smile and has a very good greeting and demeanor, not just like, oh, you're bugging me, I'm on the phone, just have a seat over there and he'll be out with you. More like, hey, we're really glad to have you here, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, and Matt will be out in just a second. And can I get you, what's your favorite drink? Would you like soda, coffee, tea? Really, really, I think make them feel comfortable, make them feel welcome, make them feel relaxed. Don't have them, if your office looks like you could, throw the 6 things you have in a duffel bag and head out to Columbia, it's probably not the right staging. I mean, you really want it's good to show things like patriotism if that's, or it's good to show family pictures if if you're a family person. It's good to just have some nice stuff in there and have it established. I mean, it doesn't have to be just a single couch and table where it looks like you just rented it and you've been in business for 5 minutes. It shows stability if it looks like this is well decorated, this is personal, this is things that they've put up over the years of cool things they've done, and or maybe even whether it be out there or in your own office, as Bill always refers to it, a brag wall. Some of the, if you have a community award for doing something really good for your community, or if you're involved in the Chamber of Commerce, if you're the past president of your Rotary or your Kiwanis Club, if you're a volunteer coaching or boys and girls club, or volunteering at your church, or whatever it is that you're into, have if you've got your degree from a certain university, or you've got some designations and certificates like a CFP or a AIF or AAMS or whatever it might be, have some of those certificates up on the wall to show some of the things that you've worked hard to accomplish. And then when they come in, I think as much as you possibly can, don't have sitting across the desk, and is always kind of viewed as adversarial. You're not on the same side of the desk; you're on the opposite side of the desk, and so if you can, I always like to pull off a small round table where you're fairly close and intimate, where you've got that proximity that's not too close, where you invade their space, because some of us can be guilty of that too. You can't be the close talker that's 6.5 inches from them, but you also don't want to be across the biggest desk you've ever seen in the world and you're 10 feet away from them, or it feels like you're on the opposite side. And truly, you want to get away from your screens. You don't want to be talking through screens or have distractions, or if you could have either a separate room for meetings, or have at least a small round table off, in one corner of your office away from your desk, where you're sitting down with them with nothing really in between you. You're kind of, there's no corners, so you're all at the same table collaborating and working towards what's best for them. It feels more approachable. And you could go on and on and on, with that kind of stuff. I mean, we've done a number of different things, and Bill and Matt and the team, I think it's important as you go through or get a chance to go through some of these classes they're offering, possibly, bring in pictures of from the second somebody, or a video, what somebody sees the second they walk in your office, and how they're greeted, and the welcome sign, and kind of what the people up front say, and then what it looks like walking down the hall, and then once they get into your office, how it's set up and how it's staged. The little details make a huge difference. Sometimes that 1 or 2% difference is the difference between you and the person down the street getting the business.
Yeah, oh, 100%. And it is all of these little things that are adding up. And so to me, you've kind of gone over them already, but I just want to point out that, number 6 of our crucial steps is that you educate, not mansplain. If you're not familiar with the term mansplaining, it's, looking down from on high as the man, explaining it to people on how things are, rather than working together to solve problems, or walk through issues and concerns, which, you've already discussed. And then finally, and this is one that, I think a lot of folks are guilty of, is don't talk so much. As Chad said multiple times on this broadcast, ask your question and shut up. You don't need to ask it and then just keep talking until, you feel like you've described it in every possible way and language that, now they can answer. And if they don't immediately respond within seconds, you start talking again. Give them a chance, right? Some of the questions you're asking are meant to be thought provoking, meaning they sit there for a second thinking about it. That's the purpose. I had one client that I was talking to, and a really cool feature of Zoom. He was doing Zoom meetings because obviously the pandemic. And one of the things on Zoom is it'll tell you, who percentage of time you talked versus the other person. And he found in his discovery session, he was talking 60% of the time. That is way too high. Way too high. It should 25% or less. So I want to be respectful of time. I know we're running low. I want to share the screen again here. Again, if you would like a copy of that ABCs of Pipeline Management, which is an entire document that walks through every step of the different types of folks and how you can work with them, and it just describes that whole chart in detail, go ahead and go to the link, and that'll take you to a little brief questionnaire. It'll answer those questions. And then the other thing that you can get, if you choose, is at the bottom of that questionnaire, there's an option to ask for a growth analysis. And this is where our team will call you and they will walk through all the things that we've learned over the decades that can impede your growth. They'll go through what you're trying to accomplish and give you some ideas on what you might need to knock out of your way so that you can keep on this path to growth. The next thing I want to talk to you about, again, and I mentioned it earlier, is our Sales Success Bootcamp. This is a new offering, but it's taking all of these principles and things that we've learned over decades, things that I've learned myself over the 20 years I've been in this, and it's applying it. So it's actually going to be sitting down. We will be practicing questions. We will go through all of these steps of the overall pipeline and sales cycle in detail. So if you, like I said, if you've got a new advisor on the team, that you would like to get them trained on how to sell. Maybe they've only been working with clients up till this point. This is the ideal class. Or if you're just going to be starting up seminars now that we've been coming out of this pandemic, you probably want to resharpen the tool, as Chad said, and come out and dust off the rust and go through this process. We will go through the entire sales cycle and walk you through it. So we did have a final question, and that is that is Chad going to offer the Chad Henry Masterclass again? He had a friend that he attended and had a tremendous success. Everybody that's ever done it and done it right has had tremendous success. We're still looking at it. We always want to gauge that. We don't like to do it every single year because then we start to cycle through everybody. We still want it to be exclusive. So we'll probably be looking at it again, just to answer your question there, Joe. With that, we've come to the hour. Chad, I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome, Matt. I do want to add just 10 seconds and just say that everything that Matt's talking about here, and this is somebody that's in the trenches with you, that advisor to advisor. I can tell you this is the exact same stuff that Bill and all the coaches, and in fact, Matt was a fairly new coach back then, taught me. and it's actionable. It's not like all those other things that we go to where somebody's teaching us something that's not in our shoes, that's not actionable, and it's like this high level theory, and you go back and go, okay, that was a bunch of garbage that didn't really help my practice. These are truly actionable steps, and if you just follow them and listen to what these coaches say, I would be absolutely shocked if you didn't find the value in this 3, 4, 5 times over, and what it's going to mean to your practice and your income.
I agree. And thank you, Chad. Thank you for that. But again, thank you for your time. Thank you for spending your afternoon with us. And I wish you all a great rest of your week.
Yeah, thanks everybody.